I was so concerned with getting everybody into the room. I didn't remember to get the recording of this as well. But the thing we were just talking about was around who is relevant to what message you're putting out there. And I really like this subversive concept of goals that I heard on a podcast with Emmanuel Acho, who's a linebacker for the Eagles, and has a podcast called Conversations with a Black Man. Really smart dude. I recommend his work. And he talks about how we shouldn't set goals at the beginning of a process because we're often not even certain what we're capable of when we begin an endeavor, right? So we're setting goals based on what we think is possible right now, but we're going to grow in the process of achieving those goals. And what's possible once we've grown along the way to that objective totally changes the scope of the goal. And we'll often only perform to that benchmark that we've set. And a lot of times it's lower than what we're capable of because we're limited by our beliefs about ourselves at the beginning of a process. And so he talks about setting objectives, which are like broader horizons. Like, my objective is to be the most influential coach in Colorado, right? Does that mean I'll make $200,000 on the way? Does it mean I might do a TED talk? Sure, maybe. But like, those are just parts of this bigger process that I'm engaged in that doesn't have an end point. And so I think that's a really powerful way to think about framing objectives for growing a business, right? Or bringing our work to the world. Do we want to quantify it? Sure. We want to know what the numbers are. We want to have some targets to really motivate us or create clarity on how we're doing. But we don't want to limit ourselves to thinking that our success is just these concrete milestones. But could we open ourselves up to a bigger process of goal management along the way? And I think that speaks to what Lindsay said about thinking beyond just the people you want to reach with your message to the people you didn't even imagine would resonate with what you have to say.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know, does anyone else here come from corporate world or like in corporate world trying to go into coaching? I don't know for you guys. But it was been really hard for me in the transition. Yes, Allie too. That trying to shift, like I was so goal oriented. And so I know I at least have a big like hyperachiever saboteur and a big on achieving. And one of the hardest things for me in transitioning from going from corporate world and what success is into the coach world is shifting what actually success means to me. And I found myself so focused on counting the dollars, counting the amount of clients, and judging my own personal success on that versus really what is success now for me in terms of those larger objectives that he was talking about, of the impact I'm having and the change in the lifestyle I'm creating for myself and the freedom that I'm getting and the people I'm getting to connect with, the work I'm doing that's filling up my time. So it's like, that's been a big shift for me, is how do I reset those goals and try to untrain those very well-worn paths of achieving mindset versus more of an objective set mindset.
Yeah, and we've actually spent a lot of time on that in our work, Lindsay, around like thinking about, because both of us are running our own businesses and recognizing that the revenue is not the only thing that matters. And I landed really early in my work on this concept of robust and spacious. That's how I want my coaching practice to feel. I want it to feel rigorous. I want it to feel like I'm doing good work. I feel like I'm raising the bar, but like that it's spacious, that I can take every Friday off if I want, that I don't have to like wake up at 7 and start hitting the mat to really make it work, right? That I feel like I still own my time. Those are things that mattered more to me than revenue when I really looked at it. And like, how do I feel about it? Do I wake up excited? I woke up so excited to get on this call. I was on my morning run today and I was like, I wonder if people are actually going to show up for this because I really love sharing this stuff. Right. So, like, I got joy today just from the things I had on my calendar. And so, joy is a valid business strategy. Like, if it feels good, you're going to want to do more of it. And motivation is the perennial like problem in entrepreneurship. How do we stay motivated? How do we stay focused? Simple question. Do you like it? Because if you like it, you'll do more of it. And it doesn't mean you have to love everything you're going to do. There's some stuff that I have to do that's hard and it just is a bummer. But like, are you staying connected to that joy and to that place of excitement? Because that's what's going to make you want to do more of it. And it's the same thing that makes you attractive to other people, is this feeling of like, wow, like, Lindsay's so much fun to be around. She really seems like she's having a good time running this group call. Like, I wonder if I can get her on my calendar again. And I've had run workshops that like, that's been the impact I've had on someone in the room. They just enjoyed the quality of my presence and they invited me to do more stuff with them. They had fun with me. They liked me. They wanted to like be around the energy I was creating with them. And that's something that we do naturally when we feel good about what we're doing. So if we're on a call and we're like stressed out or we're nervous about getting it right or we're kind of in our heads about it, that's going to come across in some way or another. So can we just drop back into this moment of gratitude for like, wow, I'm doing something that I like chose to do right now and that I'm at choice. I liked this really simple shift of I have to I get to. And I say it to myself and to my clients all the time. I don't have to do any of this. I get to do this. What a privilege. What a gift. You know what I mean? Like I'm not doing all these other things that I don't want to do right now, or that I might have to do if I was under a different set of conditions. And just looking at our to-do list as that I get to list can be a big shift in mindset. But I want to pause there just to give folks a chance to ask any questions about kind of the one-on-one or the storytelling side of this before we shift gears a little bit to expanding the business kind of beyond one-on-one and talking a bit about workshops and facilitation and development strategies beyond some of this initial material we've been discussing.
I also just want to like open within that as well as like we haven't really gotten to a lot of tactical stuff, but if we have a great group of coaches here. So if you have specific questions on like pricing and rates or tools to use in one-on-one or like very tactical things, this is also a great place to do it, to ask those too. So I'm just opening that up because we haven't really touched on that yet.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. I think the big picture stuff's more interesting than the tactical, but the tactical is useful too.
Sometimes it's really helpful.
Yeah, totally.
I'll give a space to ask it.
Kristen,
Yeah.
Hi there. Hi, Gabe. Great to see you. So I'm glad that you brought up the tactical piece. I'm curious about, I've been looking at how a lot of different coaches charge, and I'm a little stuck around, like, I know when I worked with you, Gabe, I paid monthly. And then some coaches do like, charge if you pay all at once. And I'm working with individuals and some group stuff, but like it can be a big chunk for someone to pay all at once. Like, I guess I'm just like there's all these different options. I know there was this other burnout coach that I follow who she has 3 installments. So I'm just wondering where to even start with like all of that. Got any suggestions?
Yeah, I'd be happy to offer a reflection there, which is like what works best for you, what works best for the people that you want to serve. That's where I would start. What do you want it to be? Because there's no rule.
Yeah. I think that's actually a really good point is like, so I personally, what works best for me is I try to get as much upfront as possible. So I work with clients and requests that it's paid upfront, but also give them the option if not. And if it needs to be, then I make it, like 4 payments and, monthly installments, and then I'll, work with them on that. But also one thing that, Gabe, you and I talked about was I think I had a lot of rigidity around that when I first started. I was very like specific. I worked with a business coach. I was very specific on how do I make this work? Like, what is my rate and what is my process and what is this? And that really helped me get confident and kind of get the ball rolling. But what I've also noticed now as I've becoming more seasoned and my business is shifting is creating more fluidity in that. Like I think I had a session with you, Gabe, I don't know, a couple months ago or something. And I was like, I have this client, I don't know if they can pay and this and that, but I really want to work with them. He's like, well, why does it have to be black and white? Like, what does it look like that's right for this client? Is it, I have different flexibility with certain people where I know I can support them, but it might not look the traditional transactional way that it is with most clients. So do they pay late? Do they, do you shift your rate? How do you meet them where they are if they really are the right fit for you? So I think it's what is your ideal? And then where do you feel like you can be flexible within your boundaries that are still right for your business and right for your values?
Yeah, it's all made up. You get to choose what works best for you. And I do a combination of both now. I, like Lindsay, prefer upfront payment because I think it's like we're all in, we're committed, let's do this. I love the energy that brings to the start of the process. And Gloria, you're next. I got you. I love that feeling. And I also recognize that like not everybody's in a position to do that, or maybe they don't have the comfort level with the process yet to do it. Maybe they've never invested in coaching before. So I offer some flexibility there. And the rate's different for people who pay monthly. It's actually a little bit, it's like 10% more because then I have to log into my billing system every month and deal with that, right? So it's like, it's an energetic cost to me to do that. So like that's reflected in the pricing. Whereas like I only have to log into my billing system once, it's all manual, easier, cool. So I can do that however I want on a client by client basis. So just experiment and see what works for you. Gloria, go ahead. I'd love to hear your question.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. I'm so sorry I'm not using my camera. I'm calling in from Nigeria today. Um, and yeah, I went to CTI about 5 years ago. And I've been trying to really break into the American market. Right now, I coach on BetterUp and some other digital coaching platforms, and I really want to go one-on-one. And I think one of the things that I'm trying to do right now is really to set myself up in faith to receive international payments. And I feel that that's going to set me up, to really go after the type of clients that I want internationally. So my question is, what are the payment platforms or, that you use that you can get international payments on?
Great question. Real simple. PayPal, I think, will work in some countries. And I also use a system called Wise. It used to be called TransferWise. Wise works great. Has a IBAN and a SWIFT number, and that's all you need. And they're actually really low cost. I mean, I've transferred thousands of dollars through that system at a time and paid like $7 or $8 US for the transaction. I really recommend Wise because one of my largest clients is actually based in the Netherlands. And so, or at least their bank is. And so that then I can do business with yes, Wise, WISE. I can do business with them through that. And it's really simple to automate those transactions. So that's what I'd recommend. And my virtual assistant's in Europe too. I pay her with Wise.
All right. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have a question on something that we've mentioned so far? Do I have a Wise business account? I think it's personal, actually. I don't use it that much. So I think it's just a personal account. Yeah, I don't think I have a business account set up.
I have a question. And first off, apologies for taking my dog on a walk at the start of the call, but it's one of those days where we have to multitask. I recently decided to open up, go from the rigid, this is my rate, this is how you pay, blah, 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 and just be like, okay, I'm inviting whatever comes my way. And I met a girl at the hair salon, and she is a energy healer. And so we decided to barter because I wanted some of what she had and she needed some of what I had. And it's become a little murky. Like, how do you guys hold boundaries with things like that? Because also part of that was, okay, I'm not going to do the whole traditional contract. I'm going to just, but and what I'm learning is you need to have certain boundaries and you need to stick to certain things. But how do you guys navigate that?
So I also bartered with somebody who was doing yoga therapy and coaching. And I felt similarly. I mean, fortunately, this was a very close friend. And so I felt I would have done it regardless, but I similarly felt like I ended up, yes, it equally got murky. We ended up kind of stopping it, or we went into, let's just pay each other. If you're going to coach, then you'll pay me. And I gave a discounted rate to them, and then I paid them for their services. So we ended up transitioning to that because it's so hard to keep track. And I didn't like you and my turn, like that didn't feel right. But I think you hit something, Susan, when you said I decided not to have a traditional contract. And maybe that's what it needs to come back to, is figuring out what boundaries here are being crossed for you. Like, what is the murkiness that's causing the uneasiness for you specifically? And how do you build boundaries with them that feel like you're able to regain some of that control? Because what sounds like is a value exchange isn't there. So I think it's offering and not being afraid to say, why don't we formalize this a little bit? Or step out of it and say, hey, we've been able to experience each other's services. Why not now go more traditional route? I pay you, pay me, and then just let it go.
Great response. And 100%.
Yes, always get it in writing. That is like, I'm sorry, like that is just like non-negotiable for me. Like, it is in writing. have to trust each other because we wrote it down. Like, and I don't think that that's actually a lack of trust in a relationship. I think it's a way of honoring the trust in the relationship to say like, hey, I really want to just focus on service here and building our connection. And here's the like logistics that are going to take care of this foundational piece to make that possible. And it's not held in the relationship anymore. It's held in the contract. So the relationship is cleaner when there's an agreement there. Brene Brown says, clear
That
is
goes clear is kind, and that goes back to, you know, it doesn't need to be black or white. It doesn't need to be all this, all that, but there needs to be some structure even in the gray.
yes, yes. And I do think that the payment terms and exchange of energy does need to be black and white. I may maybe my answer to Christine's question suggested like, oh, you can make it up. It's like you still need to decide what it is and then stick to it. Right. And like each individual relationship needs to have 100% clarity what the energy exchange is, whether that's time, resources, money, Bitcoin, whatever you call it. It needs to be crystal clear, like what are each of us getting from this connection? So everybody feels honored in that. And if you don't feel honored in that, like you need to renegotiate the agreement, you know? And like that's just, I think, absolutely essential that you have clarity in those parts. Lisa, go ahead.
I'm going to ask 2 questions before my toddler walks in the door with my husband. I'm in London, so it's the end of our day. 2 kind of big things that I'm dealing and grappling with as about 3 years into the business, really only the second year of being able to work a good chunk of time. The first 2 were more like taking time off in motherhood and loving it. Sorry, I thought that was them. But one is about, I'm moving my business. I'm moving continents again. So we'll move back to Canada in a year. And so how to kind of keep the energy that you have and kind of reinvigorate it in a new space and or tap into new networks and find clients in new environments. And if anybody's had, you know, that happen in their life and how to do that. I know COVID, we've all kind of moved around and become more global also. So, and I love coaching, even if it's remote and, you know, in person or facilitation that I do, I take it outside. So I'm very much like of that mind where if we meet in person, we can meet outside or we can be remote and you're in your garden and I'm on a walk and whatever. So any of those kinds of networks and how to find those people is what I'm grappling with. And then the second is how vulnerable to be, right? And holding that space as a coach and a business person, and also as someone who's a human who has emotions that are relatable, and how much to, I'm also a writer and I write about really, I write my own journal and letters to myself about very intense emotions and how much of that to really share and not overwhelm people who would be potential clients, you know, because so that we can also hold a little bit of boundaries in our relationship as well, and what your experience with that has been. Because I'm personally, now I'm like, maybe I should have a personal blog that's like just separate from my website, and I get to post things here that are useful and directed at that one person, at my clients. But this is like for me, and I can write whatever I want, and that's where I hold those boundaries. So
thanks, Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to the first piece of your question around where to, like, how to transition community. And that's actually a really important part of connecting to that story and that one-on-one client thing as well, which is like, where are the people that you want to speak to? Like, where do they gather? And so thinking about things that cut across the human experience beyond geography and say like, okay, cool, maybe I'm part of the London Psychedelic Society or the London Yoga Moms Club or whatever the like interest group is, and then say like, could I find the like Toronto Yoga Moms Club or the Toronto like authentic relating group, right? Where is the community of interest gathered around like a topic that you might find in another geography? That's usually where I start. And I know that's like a really simple answer, maybe too obvious, and then I don't know if it's even helpful, but that's where I always go, is like, I think about the people I want to serve in terms of psychographic profile, not demographic profile, which just means like I'm less interested in their age and gender and race and income and location, and I'm more interested in how they think, how they feel, what they believe, how they view their problems, or like their way of being in the world. They're all psychological elements of a person, not demographic elements of a person. And so thinking about like psychographics means that like it doesn't matter where you go, there's going to be people with that same set of beliefs or problems or ways of being, no matter where you are. And so are you aware of how they connect to their community around those beliefs or desires or whatever it is? And then, okay, cool, that's where I'll find them. They're all going to be at the Yoga Moms Club, or they're all going to be at the Psychedelic Club, or they're all going to be at the, the yacht club, maybe, who knows, right? But just like finding the thing that they have in common and the place that they'll be expressing those values, that makes it easy because you show up in that new town saying, hey, I'm coming from London with this, like the London whatever version of this, and now I'm bringing it here. And people are like, oh, London,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Be a hiking club. Yeah, I mean, for me, it'd be a hiking club. So, those are the places. And I'm looking at some of that and trying to find the facilitators also that work in those spaces and outdoor. So it's a good reminder to keep looking for that. I love the psychographic versus demographic as well as a reminder, because you hear so much about demographic versus,
I don't care about demographics at all. It doesn't matter to me.
One build, Lisa, I don't know if you need to leave. Do you have to drop because your family's home? No?
No, I'll just be on mute because there's a lot of background noise, and I might turn my video on and off.
Okay, good. Just checking in because I just have one build in that, and it's that like I can relate to you a lot, Lisa. I just moved within the last year, and at first it was kind of great having the space away from a lot of the commitments and things back at home, and just to have space for me. But in the last few months, I really kind of came out of that and realized I was missing and had such a need for connection. And I don't have a lot of community here. So it's also hard for me to find community and finding clients. Like it's all new for me. So I took two different routes. One was like, my goal was, how do I build more meaningful connection with new people and also build a new network? Because I realized that so much of my network was my advertising network, which was great. But to them, I'm the account person that's now a coach. And I want to start building a network of, I'm a coach who came from, advertising perhaps, but I'm Lindsay the coach, not Lindsay the advertising person. And so the two things I focus on is, one, I found a networking group, a women's professional group for entrepreneurs and, women trying to grow their own businesses, whether they're still in corporate and side hustles or they're full on doing their own businesses. And that's been amazing. I'm actually going to a networking event tonight. And through that already, I've had people sending me referrals, meeting up with me to find out more about what I do. I'm leading workshops within that space. So that's been pretty big. And then the other one was, I just said, I just want to reconnect with some people. So I went back actually to my old network and said, what are people that I used to work with, that are colleagues that I have already a lot of currency with, that I want to invest time in and reconnect with, and then just reached out to a whole bunch of them and have been scheduling calls just to connect and say hi, find out what they're doing, share what I'm doing. And then from there, like I've had somebody like, oh, I'd love to bring you in for a workshop. And it's starting to bring in more business too. So I think it's a looking out for new, but also reflecting back and see how do the people that you already know and respect and admire you, how can they also support you on this journey too?
Yeah, well said, Lindsay. And like you said, you're moving back to Canada, right? So some people who are already there.
No, I lived there for a short period, but we've lived in like 10 different countries. So back, that's like 20 years ago. So it's been a while.
I know Suzanne has something to say about this.
Yeah. I'm like,
yes,
I've moved continents 4 times over the last 15 years. And what I found really powerful in my last move, and which you probably, or maybe you have, but maybe have not tapped into, is the mom groups. There will be huge active mom communities wherever you move. Start local and just start interacting with them. And that is going to be kids and dogs. That's how you meet your network. That's how you do it. Every move, take your kids to the park and you take your dog to the park, and bam, it happens.
Oh, I love that, because this is the first time we're moving as a family. So yeah, that makes total sense that I didn't even really think about that.
And the next step for you is, once your kids start school, that opens up a whole another community. I mean, kids are a key to a networking component that, it's a gift, but it also, it comes at a cost.
Yeah, I don't have that advantage, so I think you could leverage that for
Not
sure.
You.
And I love
Get a dog, Gabe. Get a dog.
Get a dog. Yeah, then I'd have to take care of a dog. It comes at a cost, right? But I liked what Lisa said. A thread I want to pull on briefly is around the what I call the legacy community. So the people who knew you as you were versus the people who know you as you are. And I think that's really important, like, as especially for folks who are transitioning more full time to coaching and people raise their hand, like, I'm leaving corporate to do this. Can you build a network of people who represent who you want to become, not the people who like represent you as you were? Because ultimately, over the long term, the people who know you as you were are going to keep you in that role because the relationship requires you to be who you were then versus the people who see you as you are now or see you as you want to become. Those are the relationships that are going to stretch you and grow you in that new direction. And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn because I have a very hard time letting people go. And I realized there were a lot of friends and people in my life that knew me as I was. And like, were never going to take me seriously in my work because they had a different set of beliefs about me than I had about myself or that I
Yeah.
wanted to be true moving forward. So really pay attention to that. Who are the people around you asking you to be? That legacy version of you or that version of you that's really coming forth into the world, and pay attention to that.
Yeah, I think we all have that. I saw some nods on this call.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mine was pretty big shift as well. From a
totally.
pretty extreme
It can be painful.
difference.
It can be, there can be some grief there that's very natural to feel.
I so appreciate you saying that, Gabe, because it's what I needed to hear in this moment. Um, what you all said earlier. Oh, just taking a deep breath.
Yeah.
Transitioning from corporate into full-time coaching has been this beautiful spiritual, emotional experience for me.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that because it's just reassurance. And these are like happy relief tears because when I first decided, I was very tied to this world that I had been a part of for so long. And I think I was dreaming small. I was dreaming, but I was dreaming small and in that same world. What can I do as a coach in that world or related to that world? And it wasn't until, Gabe, what you said earlier, really tapping into your purpose. I truly believe that every single person has this beautiful, unique mission and purpose written on their hearts. And my purpose is to help them unveil that. And when I tap into that more, it really comes from my belief as a Christian. And so I love the CTI framework because it so beautifully flows in the spiritual world and realm. And it goes so very well with Christian beliefs too. And so it wasn't until I stopped and really forced myself to think bigger that I realized what I really want to be is a Christian leadership development and life coach and really attract the Christian community.
Yeah.
And because of that, I had to stop thinking, what can I do in this corporate world? And yes, I can do so much beautiful work in the corporate world, but there's so much more. And now I need to really go where my people are
Yeah.
and really tell my authentic story and really, help them hear me from the heart. And I just thank you. Thank you, Lindsay and Gabe, for just sharing these beautiful pearls of wisdom. It's really just invigorated me even more.
It's inspiring to hear you share that, Christine. Thank you so much. It's really moving to hear. And you
Thank
are on that purpose path, and it feels so different when you're there. And it's very, very hard to separate from that context where we feel safe and where we feel like we can do stuff, but our possibility is smaller. It comes back to that thing I was saying at the beginning. When we start to set a goal, we can't imagine what's possible from where we are because we're still limited by those walls of the comfort zone. And until we really step out into that raw open space of possibility, we don't know what's possible to create. And that purpose and that fire and that the writing on your heart, that beautiful metaphor you used, can be like a way to bridge that gap. Because we all have needs for safety, dignity, and belonging. And because we're social creatures, we'll usually trade 2 units of dignity for 1 unit of belonging, right? Like, I'll make myself small for you. I'll believe what you need me to believe. I'll say what I want when you say. I'll bury my needs to keep you safe. We all do that to feel belonging. And so that the path that you're on and that many of us are on requires us to invert that and say, like, I actually want to honor my dignity. I want to honor my purpose. I want to honor my values. I'm willing to sacrifice short-term belonging and maybe spend some time in the wilderness on my own, metaphorically or literally in my case, to get to a place where I can find my people and the folks who share that value. But that can feel like an infinite chasm to cross because we're hardwired for that belonging. So it does bring up a lot of emotion to face that. but recognizing that the bravery it takes to do that, first off, is rare. So there's not a lot of people who even get to that point. And second off, recognizing that that feeling of anxiety or grief or tension around it means you're actually in the right place and on the right path can be a very, very powerful moment for ourselves. It's kind of like when I learned from meditation, not to get upset when I catch myself thinking, but to be grateful that I caught myself thinking so I can bring my attention back to what I'm choosing to focus on. In the same, you can be grateful for difficult experiences like losing a community or feeling a sense of that like loss or confusion or like terror when we're stepping into that unknown, because that's when we know like we're on the realness, right? That's the good stuff. And so reprogramming that response to say, this isn't a threat, this is where I'm supposed to be, can really help us build up the courage to continue on that path. But thank you very much for sharing that, Christine. It was moving to hear.
And I don't know, Christine, if you, as part of your journey, but I really connecting with your story too, in the sense of trying to feel how you make your purpose fit in a place, or feeling like it's just waiting for you, but you're not ready yet. I had a lot of other people imposing their fears on my ambition, I guess, or my goals. And I'm not, in the corporate space, especially, and in coaching and being, I don't know, like a bit younger than maybe traditional corporate people going into coaching sometimes. I got a lot of like, really now? Maybe you should like do 5 more years and then go into it. And so it created this narrative of I'm not ready yet. And I have to just find out how I can check this box or fill this need here. And then when I was able to let go and say, well, that's their own story, that's their own fear, it really created a lot of freedom for me to say that isn't my fear, that's just theirs.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And it so resonates with me too, because, for the longest time, I knew that I really yearned to work with the Christian community. But because I was placing value defined by this other world or this other industry, right? I was very hesitant to come out and say, I'm a Christian coach. And it wasn't until last week, actually, that I completely, rebranded my mission statement and my LinkedIn profile, all of that, to really speak about my purpose and who I want to work with. And it was so freeing, so very freeing to do that. So I am on a journey. And I thank you for being part of it today, because this is really exactly what I needed in this moment right now.
So glad you're here, and thanks for sharing. And I'm reminded of this really beautiful book. And also podcast, or even just a little PDF if you just have time for that. It's called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And it was written by this nurse. I see some heads nodding, like people know this work. And one of the number 1 regrets was like living for what other people wanted for us. Right. So it's like that's something when we get to the end of the road, we will have on the scoreboard. Did we honor our hearts? Did we honor what we needed? Did we listen to somebody else's fears and make it our own? And so really just love hearing conversations that are breaking that mold here. And yeah, thank you, Christine, for being so open with us and sharing your story. But I want to just give a chance for maybe one more question if it was waiting in the wings to come forward before we switch gears for the sake of time here. And just because Lindsay and I have so much more we want to share with you guys. And I'm noticing that we've all spent an hour together already. No pressure to follow up on Christine's, beautiful statement. Okay, then I want to switch gears a little bit. We've been talking a bit about kind of telling your story and finding this purpose and community and these pieces around authenticity. I want to hold on. Lisa has a question in the chat. Vulnerability question. It's a personal journey. The vulnerability question that you asked. Yes, around the how much to share. Yes, I think I'd like to come back to that later, because it kind of like the pricing thing or structure with Kristen, it's very individual and authentic to you. And the only thing that stuck out to me in what you shared is like worrying about like turning people off or being too much. Those aren't your people. Don't worry about them. Right. So it's like be who you want to be. And the folks who are going to connect with you at that deeper level will find you through that. I do have a bias against what I call the vulnerability Olympics. So like just being performatively open online, I think is a turnoff. But like if you're doing it in a way that's like, oh, I'm not watching you process your thoughts in real time and kind of doing group therapy with you, but I'm doing it in a way that's really sharing your heart and being like real about your experience, that's different. So that's what I would say around that piece. But
I'll do one quick update there, Gabe, and then we'll move forward. But I think there's two things, like how vulnerable to be outside of like sessions with clients, but then also when thinking about, how vulnerable or where do you try to connect by sharing story with clients or prospective clients. And I think that there is room for that and there's space for that. And Gabe, I see you do that really beautifully when we meet and talk. And I think we have to remember in those moments when there's something that we want to share, are we doing so, or if we're getting vulnerable, are we doing so for the sake of connection and supporting our client versus the sake of feeling like we need to share our story?
yeah.
So it's always in service of them versus in service of us. So I don't think it's like, how vulnerable do I get? Or is this going to turn them off? It's like, is this in service of what we're working through and where they're trying to get to, and not about me?
Bravo. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, that's, I think 100%. I agree. And yeah, thinking about sharing online versus sharing in a session, I'm super open and available in sessions with clients. Like there's no, I'm 100% here. And I think about the difference between vulnerability and availability. I actually like wrote a little piece on Medium about this, about how like vulnerable is like perceived as this weak thing or like too muchness, versus available means like I'm totally here. My heart is open. I'm connected to you. I'm in this with you. And I think that can be a useful kind of shift in language, just to drop some of the baggage associated with vulnerability, to say we want to be fully available for people. But that doesn't mean that we need to be like, I'm so vulnerable. Here's my heart, right? It's like, it's not the same energy. And so, yeah. And who is it in service of, I think, is a powerful question to ask. So thank you for bringing that to us, Lindsay. But I want to switch to talking a little bit about kind of how to structure a business to maximize the opportunity that you want to create with all of this powerful stuff that we've built on. And so shifting a little into the tactical side of things. And again, this is just one version of success. But both Lindsay and I have found that a key to getting past that 6-figure mark is really blending coaching with other offerings, because coaching is a really powerful skill set that's useful in contexts beyond just the one-on-one stuff. And so I found a lot of success thinking about, how do I take the core philosophy or the tools of my one-on-one coaching work and bring them to workshops or retreats or leadership development opportunities, and building on a facilitation practice in addition to my coaching practice was what allowed me to like basically double my revenue in a year. And now my business is about 60-40 facilitation to coaching. So I do more facilitation now than I do coaching, but I rooted it all in my coaching work. So thinking about like, what were the key components of the coaching process that I wanted to create a more accessible workshop around, or change the format with. And a useful metaphor for thinking about the structure here is kind of like a car dealership, right? If you just had like this really expensive high touch like Lamborghini on the lot, that's your one-on-one coaching, right? It's a big investment, it's high touch, it's a lot of time and energy with one person. It better be a high ticket item. But not everybody's going to be able to come in and just buy a Lamborghini off the lot. Some of them want to like lease a Kia, and so that's what I think of my workshops as. It's like they're a chance for somebody to come in at much lower cost or even free, and like feel some impact, feel some sense of what's possible. And then that opens the door to deeper work. Or I've heard it called the 3-legged stool, right? You need something to stand on, that you have at least 3 revenue streams in your business, and they should all feed each other. And in mine, it's one-on-one work, retreats, and corporate workshops and facilitation. And they all feed each other, because people who are like my one-on-one clients, some of them come to my retreats. And people who come to the corporate workshop, some of them become one-on-one clients. Some of my one-on-one clients work in organizations and recommend my workshops and retreats, right? So like they're all actually different offerings. They're all different price points. They all have different target audiences, but they are synergistic with one another and they feed into each other. And they're all related to the same body of work. They all tie back to purpose and authentic relating as their kind of common denominator. So I'm not changing the things I have to do to serve those clients. And those psychographic profile elements are still the same, but the context that the people are operating in is different. Maybe some of them are coaches that want to launch a business, or they're people who are looking for deeper alignment with meaning within their role. Maybe some of them are HR professionals inside of a large company that want to build out their team's ability to resolve conflict and connect with that deeper layer of motivation beyond the bottom line, right? So like they still have some beliefs in common, but the way that they're operating in the world is really different. And so thinking that through for each of you, like how would you expand your offerings beyond one-on-one? Because candidly, I think it can be really hard to build a long-term sustainable practice just doing one-on-one work. Because some people have mentioned, I think Gloria mentioned platforms like BetterUp or Sounding Board, some of these large coaching vendor networks. They're great for getting high volume, but they don't pay a lot relative to what you can get on your own in the open market, especially if you're working in the US or Europe. People will be able to afford a higher rate than you're going to actually get for paying for delivery inside those systems. And I work for 4 of them. So I'm doing a lot of this type of coaching. And it also tends to be not my favorite clients. I love working with people who I'm like really excited by, people like Lindsay, you know what I mean? People who are doing work in the world that matters to me, versus like somebody who's like a mid-level executive at PayPal and is working on improving like the quality of a fintech product that I don't really care about. I'm not going to show up the same way to that coaching session. It's just how it is. So thinking strategically about that, like, do you want high volume and like low revenue, or do you want maybe like less volume and higher revenue or higher quality clients and the people that you want to work with? So thinking through that for yourself, and kind of structuring your business in a way where you can have an offering beyond the one-on-one was such a huge unlock for me. And I'm comfortable speaking for you, Lindsay, for you as well, to think like, how do I really build beyond the one-on-one stuff and think of ways to reach more people with the same work?
Yeah. I didn't expect to get into facilitation quickly, but I did through actually connecting with my old corporation, but not my exact company, but wider network of it. And it kind of fell into my lap in a way of, an opportunity came and seized it. And I didn't expect how much I would enjoy it too. So I was like, oh, this is kind of like a little intimidating, but maybe this is interesting and fun, and gave it a shot and loved it. And what I love about it is not just the ability of how it financially can expand your business quite a bit, but more so also just the variety. I love one-to-one coaching, but a lot of that is it just requires a different type of energy, a different type of preparation, a different type of work, and building and taking the skills of coaching and what I learned in my one-on-one and through my trainings, and being able to put that into a different format, and then engaging a different type of audience with that work in a different capacity. It just kind of lights something else up in me. So I'm someone who needs variety in how I work, and that has allowed me to kind of gain that variety while still staying in a place that's really fulfilling.
Yeah, that novelty and that variety is important, right? You don't want to feel like you're ever static as a coach. I think that is a requirement to be successful in this industry, is to be constantly growing. And this might sound a little harsh too, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's a requirement to be excellent. Like if you really want to be successful here, you need to be good at it. And part of that is loving it and doing it from a place of love. But another part of it is skill, right? We mentioned character and competency. They both matter. I think character matters a lot more, but competency is also important. And so are you giving yourself opportunities to try on things that might feel like a growth edge for you? So you're expanding your capacity and your range. Those are really important to consider in how you build your business. Because if you just build your business around the little thing that you're comfortable doing, you're going to eventually stagnate there. It might take you 8 months, might take you 8 years, but like you're just eventually going to stop growing. Versus like, how could I challenge myself to think about new ways to deliver this work, or places where I'm experiencing novelty, or I have to prep for this call. I don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Those are places where you're growing as somebody who's really highly skilled and seeking mastery in what they do. And so I think that's really important to be able to have those things that scare you, right? Where you're not just relying on what you know. And when you think about how to build this, thanks for being here, Gloria. I appreciate you. When you're thinking about how to build this stuff, start again, like with what lights you up, or what you're really excited by, or what you think the world needs. But don't stop there. Don't stop by thinking, oh man, the world really needs this thing that I believe in. because then that's an assumption that other people care about that too. I've heard the joke that no business plan ever survives its first contact with customers. And it's important that we get out of our heads as entrepreneurs and actually talk to the people who might want to buy from us about what it is that they need. Because ultimately, I don't think you need a niche. I just think you need to know how to solve a problem. And so do you know who has that problem? And have you communicated to them that you know how to solve that problem? That's ultimately what sales is like an understanding of somebody else's issues and framing your solution in a way that meets that need effectively. And so it's okay to ask people in your network what would be useful to them, right? Lisa mentioned the hiking group. Maybe just like going on a walk and talking to some of those moms about like their challenges in, transitioning out of, executive mode into motherhood, or maybe it's around time management. For me, it was going to people inside of HR teams and asking about their challenges with communication. Spoiler alert, everybody has a problem with communication. It's just how do they frame that challenge is the way I needed to learn to speak to them. So it's okay to ask for informational interviews. It's okay to research the people that you want to talk to. During the pandemic, I set myself this goal to talk to 40 people about one-on-one coaching without selling them anything. And I did. I went on Facebook groups and personal development stuff and just posted like, I want to learn about your problems. Here's a link for 10 minutes. Everybody was sitting around on the internet. It was super easy to fill my calendar with calls. And one or two of them ended up converting, but I mostly just learned a lot about how people think about anxiety and authenticity and purpose. And so if you want to get really good at selling something that you believe in, find a way to translate it to what other people actually think about it, because your idea around it might only be the way you think about it. What matters is that you can connect the dots to how somebody else thinks about that same issue. And so talk to somebody before you pitch who's not necessarily going to buy from you, right? Somebody that you can just learn from and understand how they buy similar products. Especially with organizations, it can be really useful to think about what's their business cycle, when's their budget year end, you know what I mean? Who's the decision maker on this project, or even forming a partnership. Like I partner with some facilitation groups that just do leadership development trainings. And so I kind of look at how they run their business and think about what are their clients asking them for when I frame the offerings I build. Lindsay, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think in building into it, it also is not just like the needs and the problems to solve and doing that research about the person and yes, the company, but also not being afraid to work with other, like to get advice from other people who are in this space. So I think what was really big for me was as I started to navigate into the facilitation space, there's a lot of questions that I never done it before. And I worked with people in my network who are familiar with the space to find out what really should I be charging? How does it work in terms of like SOWs and different parts of the process that I had not encountered before. So as I was having conversations, I could come understanding what is to be expected and speak rates that I felt confident in that were going to fall within their range, but also making it a collaboration with the person that I was working with at the company in the corporation to kind of say, what is your budget looking like? What does success look like for you for this? And kind of dig into details, not being afraid to ask some of those questions. And it ended up creating a really beautiful partnership where I was still the driver in terms of proposals, but they were really the collaborator, and this is what we need. This is what to expect. This is what I can pay or charge. And I was able to work within that. So I think it's not being afraid to ask some hard questions to either people you have in the sidelines that can kind of mentor you and support you, or judging the person that you're working with on the type of partnership you can create with them and designing this together.
Yeah. And there's a lot around partnership that Lindsay said that's super important around the collaborative aspects and things like that. And I think also having somebody who's been there before can guide you and support you, whether that's a mentor, whether that's a coach, whether that's somebody who's just in your court or a colleague, a peer, whatever it is. I think that's essential. Right. And shameless plug, it's important to hire somebody who's done what you want to do to help you do that thing. I think everybody who's on this call who's thinking all right, cool, I wrote a bunch of notes down. It's how likely are you actually to follow through on any of this stuff if somebody wasn't holding you accountable for it, if you weren't building on it with an incremental process? I had to learn that the hard way. I was really resistant to hiring somebody for a long time to help me. And when I did, it was just this is so much easier. I have somebody to ask questions, somebody to help me figure out answers. I'm getting out of my own head. So I think it's really helpful to remember that we we need to ask for support, and we also need to be willing to be a collaborative peer to the people that we're doing business with, not just how can I extract value, but how can I really come in and create transformational impact with the work that I'm doing. But it doesn't also need to be like this game changer thing. Like one of the big unlocks for me was realizing that people need the basics more than ever. And like the workshops I teach are super simple. It's stuff I wish I learned in 8th grade. You know what I mean? It's like we don't have to come in like the next Gabor Mate or Brene Brown to like really be impactful for people. The bar is pretty low in terms of like where the common denominator is for human communication and relationships is abysmal. And so like give yourself credit for what you already know and recognize the value that even the level of training and expertise you have now probably puts you in some very high percentile of like the average person in your industry or space. It took me a long time to own that too, right? Of like the fact that I have something that matters, that people want. It doesn't have to be this revolutionary brand new thing. And so get out of your own way with that, because I think people really need the basics more than ever. And just if you can make it engaging, if you can make it fun, if you can make it simple and you can make it relevant to their experience, that's what matters. Not that you have something that nobody's ever heard of before. That doesn't actually matter, because people need it again and again and again in order for it to stick.
I think I heard, somewhere some quote around that it's not about that you need like, it's okay if you're sharing an idea that already exists. Someone might just need to hear it from your perspective and
Yes.
hear it from you. And then that's what makes it click for them. And I was just in a leadership workshop yesterday with a corporation where I was teaching the power of coaching and leadership and actually coaching skills. And it was all about that. And I said, I get like what I'm telling you here is nothing revolutionary. This is the basics, but it is the basics that sometimes we have to get back to that's most important, because with leadership and just life in general, when we are most stressed and anxious and just what we've been living in constantly, it is usually the basics that are the first to go, but they can have the greatest impact. So it's bringing people back to that. And the idea of we don't have to overcomplicate leadership. We just have to remember that we're all human, and teaching them what that looks like and giving them the permission to. So 100% it is. And that is what really resonated. We're like, oh, yep, that's so true. I forget that all the time.
Right. And when you remind people that they have what they already need and it's a process of uncovery and discovery, not construction, you're their new best friend. Because it's like, oh, wait, I have everything. Great. Thank God. I thought I had to do all this stuff over. And so it's like, it is really powerful. You can light up a room with that concept, and there's so much truth in it that like a lot of us have just forgotten the basics, or we've become so specialized in this thing that we were trained for years that we forgot that like this broader, like just being a human and being effective and relating to and connecting with others really drives a lot of the outcomes that we think this specialization is actually responsible for. Which touches on this concept of the 80-20 rule, which I really like, which is that like 80% of our outcomes come from 20% of our efforts. And I think it's important to remember that in a business of like, we might be just kind of like the duck on the water, like kicking our legs underneath, right? But like on top, it's all smooth. It's like we're working all the time and people only see this tiny percentage of what we do. So I think that the remembering that it's like, you don't know what that 20% is going to be until you try. And when you're creating impact and value for other people, know that the things that like work really well for you and create that change that Lindsay was saying, they're the things you really want to double down on. So like broad is broke in some sense. And when you find something that works or a message that resonates, try to really be like clear and dialed in on that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, Lindsay, but there's like probably another 2 hours of stuff in my brain that wants to come out, but I want to pause here and just give folks a chance to interject or ask questions, especially folks we haven't heard from yet. I know there's a lot of wisdom and curiosity in the room, and just want to make some space for that. Kelly, go ahead.
I'm asking this question because I feel like it's a limiting belief, and maybe you can help me out with where I'm with this, is that I want to be a psychedelic end-of-life doula. And there's what I perceive a lot of resistance for charging in the space when you're working with a person who's grieving, and that I've been a hospice volunteer and I'm a doula volunteer for years. And that there's really like you shouldn't ask, I've been told you shouldn't ask, money. It shouldn't be a coaching situation when a person is in that environment. death and working with death.
Yeah. And so you're asking a question around the belief for you.
Yes, because I think I've worked through it myself, that it is a useful skill that people have, and that some people can pay, and that I can do a volunteering piece, and then also have clients that have different additional desires, and work through, the whole like home funeral and be a celebrant and be paid to be a celebrant because priests are, but there's still a lot of like, I guess it's cultural context of how to work with, is systemic, that I'm also working at too. It's a whole death fear, and that it's also, I do a lot with climate action coaching and climate and green and environmental, and that's just like bigger systemic things. And I feel like I'm probably trying to take on too much and changing too much of the world.
Yeah, I mean, like we said before, like not letting their fear become your fear, right? And I don't have an experience with the death space, but I know my version of that story was feeling like I had permission to charge money for something I actually enjoyed doing. It took me like a solid like 6 months to convince myself that was like ethically clean, because I had been conditioned to believe that like you only charge money for things that you hate doing, that like nobody else would want. It's like, I'm chopping wood for you, I'm selling a product for you, I'm grinding. This is how you make money, is it has to suck. And that was a belief that I had about it. Versus like now I can be like, yeah, it costs money. I love this. I'm having fun. That's okay. Like, and that's actually part of what makes me good in the end of the day, is that I love doing it. And so I had to give myself permission to charge money for something that I actually enjoy, because that felt ethically or socially awkward to me for a long time. And so I hear a parallel. It's not quite the same with death, but I hear a parallel here of like there's some conditioned belief or internalized system of like you can only charge for X or Y reason. And maybe going and talking to a funeral home director or somebody who sells $10,000 urns in Hollywood might give you a context of how other people approach monetizing the grief process. I have a friend who runs grief circles and is like very successful in what she does. I'd be happy to connect with her, because I think that it is a psychology thing and it's a framing thing. And so you just have to find how to meet that cultural context appropriately. Thanks for that question, Kelly.
Well, thank you. I learned a lot in just asking it. Thank you.
Danielle.
Hello. So I'm still in my coaching program, should be finishing in a couple of months. And what keeps coming up for me is, how do you break through when it seems like everyone is a coach and the market is completely saturated with coaches? Everywhere you turn, everyone is a coach. So that's a block I'm definitely coming up against as I'm like coming into this work. Yeah.
The belief is you're late to the party.
Kind of, or it's like, how do you differentiate yourself when like they're in a market that's just what feels like, I live in Austin, Texas. It's like everyone seems to be a coach, or in these liberal cities, it seems like everyone is now a coach of some sort. So it's like, how do you navigate that? And the obvious answer might be bring your own unique gifts and your own perspective, and but I don't know, in some way it just, I feel even overwhelmed talking about it, because it's like, there are a lot of coaches.
I don't know if I don't know much about the Austin, like what you're experiencing, but I was feeling that way too, only because I feel like once you get in the world of coaching, you start surrounding yourself by the world of coaching. So I'm connecting with coaches on LinkedIn. Other coaches are finding on LinkedIn. I'm following coaches. I'm in a coaching network on Facebook or on Instagram. I'm following coaches. So it feels like my feed's everywhere. And what I'm getting served and emailed at is all about what coaches are offering. And I'm like, oh my God, how can I compete with this? But then I really realized I am surrounding myself by coaches. So I'm only seeing coaches. But when I talk to my clients or other people in my network, people I know, they're not being surrounded and bombarded by coaches. They're being surrounded and bombarded by who's in their industry and in their network. So I think it's maybe, and I don't know, Danielle, does that at all resonate? Like, I don't know what your experience is, but I think there's an opportunity too, to how do you just quiet that noise in your own head of the story of there's too many coaches out there for me, and focus in on how, like, who are your ideal clients and how do you tell your story or find the people that you are connecting with one-on-one, and focus on just building connections and relationships with the right people versus competing and trying to find space amongst other coaches.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to add to that it does, like, I suffer from the same thing. It's very much a network effect of like we see like that the algorithms are real good these days, right? And so like we see what's around us and we think that's what the world is, and it's not. And you live in Austin, I live in Boulder, right? These are like spirituality hubs of woo-woo, like hyper concentrated juice. And so like, could you get out of your bubble and into a bigger market? Like, you know, what's Houston up to right now with coaching? You know what I mean? What's New Orleans doing with the coach scene? Like where are there people who have never heard of what you do? Right? I had a story for a while that everybody in the world knew what authentic relating was because I was in love with it for like 3 years and still am. Nobody knows what that is. I have to constantly explain to people what it is. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I know some of the work you do, Danielle, like nobody's experienced it before. And so there's a limiting belief around that somewhere that I'd encourage you to get curious about. It's like, who are you afraid to tell what you do? Maybe you need to go talk to them, right? Who are the people that you feel really comfortable talking about, like sound healing or coaching, whatever? Maybe they're not the people you need to get good at talking to. Maybe it's the people who you think are going to judge you or make fun of you or doubt the impact of what you have. Those are the people who might be outside of that bubble. Because I don't think coaching is saturated at all. I think that's a total myth. I think coaching is a rapidly growing industry. I think coaching is today what yoga was in the 90s, where like there were some people in Berkeley who had heard about it, or people have been to India and done a training. Now there's like yoga studios and strip malls in Rochester, New York. Everybody knows what yoga is. I think coaching's about 15 or 20 years from that same threshold of cultural integration. I think we're still on the leading edge of the bell curve of people who even know what this stuff is and are trained in it. And as more people take their mental health seriously, there's a generational shift around mental health in our world happening right now that's going to take a decade to complete, where people are recognizing the value of it and nobody's embarrassed to talk about their therapist anymore. In fact, it's like a filtering question on dating apps now. Like, are you seeing a therapist? Because that's how I take you seriously as a grown-up. Like, this is just starting to happen. This is all new. And coaching is still finding its place in that cultural conversation of like, where do we fit as service professionals on the spectrum of healing and growth that we're all recognizing as a society we need to learn how to prioritize better. So I think coaching is almost a blue ocean right now, and it's just about finding like the place that conversation isn't happening yet to connect your unique story to it. That's what I would offer in response to that.
I'm gonna jump into, oh, sorry, go ahead, Lindsay. I was just gonna, I was gonna say, I live in London. It's a huge city. There's like tons of coaches, but it's again, the network effect, but also I think of it as how many doctors are there? How many therapists are there? How many physios are there? How many, you know, like, even if there are lots in your network or your area, or it seems like it, there's still also lots of people that want to be served by that, or that maybe don't even know that will be served by that. And so it's okay, because not every coach is going to vibe with every person, or the offers aren't going to match. And so I thought that in the beginning as well. And it really helped click to think, pick a profession. There's lots of people in it, and they're all offering slightly different things, or it's about location, or, you know, find what it is that helps you connect.
Huge. Yeah. Thanks, Lisa.
And also, I'm just rereading The Prosperous Coach. I listen to and read it a lot because it really resonates with my style of coaching. But one thing that they were just saying is that like there's might be a lot of coaches out there, but there's a lot of not good coaches out there also.
Yes.
So yes, yes. So Danielle, I'm sure you're a brilliant coach, right? So there's probably so many coaches you're seeing, but are they actually really coaching? Are they really creating the impact that you can? So trust in your ability as well.
Yes. Be excellent. Coming back to that thing, like, how do you be excellent and convey your excellence? And there are a lot of coaches out there, and I know for a fact that I talked to somebody who did this as statistical research for their thesis, and I think 75% of people who start a coaching practice don't make it past year 3. 75%. So there's a lot of coaches out there right now. Are you a coach that's going to be there in 3 years? And what are you going to do to make that happen? Because a lot of people are saying they're doing it, and then a month later they're like selling real estate or doing home inspections or something else. They've moved on to the next thing because they realize, oh wait, never mind.
All right, Allie.
Hi guys, thank you so much for this. I've been on off screen for a variety of reasons, but I just want to say thank you. I've learned so much, and gosh, it just feels like going back to the basics is what I'm taking away from this. And that's not my question. My business has changed. I've been in business now for 5 years. So Gabe, thanks for saying I'm past the 3-year mark.
You made it.
I feel like I've started over every single year. So resilience is what I like applaud myself on, but I'm kind of tired and I don't know if I've truly landed on what it is that I'm supposed to be doing in this profession. That said, that's not my question. My question is, Gabe, you mentioned a virtual assistant. Can you tell me more about when you decided to hire one, what they do, how it's impacted your ability to kind of lean into some of the scary stuff, or your ability to think big and think bigger? I'd love to learn a little bit more about that. I think that's kind of the stage I'm at.
I think that's a great question.
Thanks.
Trying to keep it quick and tactical because I know we're almost at time and I want to make room for Kristen and then close this up. But yeah, I realized like there was some stuff that I didn't want to do. And then there was stuff that I like that was hard. And then there was some stuff that was just like busy work or drudgery. And I realized like what's an hour of my time worth, right? In terms of the impact to my business and an opportunity cost. And I realized like going out and researching and building a database of TEDx talks to apply to was like a really high impact thing I could do, but it was going to take me a lot of time. And so like, could I hire somebody else to do that at a rate that was lower than what I would have to pay myself to do it? Because that's what it boiled down to. It's like, I have to pay myself to do it because I'm doing it anyway. So what would I be willing to pay somebody else to do that same thing for me to accelerate my business growth? And so I hired a VA when I realized I didn't have time to do like lead gen and research and stuff that was going to help me expand my reach because I was so busy just delivering services. I'm coaching like 27 people right now or something. So it's like I'm doing so much of this stuff that I didn't have time to work on the business. I was working in the business. And so working on the business is building, expanding, creating content, networking, researching opportunities. Working in the business is just like delivering services, coaching clients, running a workshop, right? So it's like, how much of your time is doing either of those things? And so I hired a VA to do all of my research for me. And that's when I realized like, I was watching people do stuff that I knew I could do if I just applied to speak at that summit. I was like, all right, cool. Next year I'm going to speak at that summit because now I know it's there. And that's when I was like, I need to have somebody help me research these opportunities for me because I'm just missing out. And so that was kind of the threshold for me. It's like recognizing I didn't have enough time to continue to expand because I was so busy doing the things that I needed to meet my contracts and obligations. And so my VA does all of my database building. And so I give them like, here's an ideal client for me, or here's the type of workshop I want to talk at. Here's the place I want you to look. Here's the things that aren't a fit. Go ahead and like, here's, $100 worth of hours to go work on this project. And like, they're on their own and they just send it to me when it's done. I say, I'd love it before the end of the month. They usually get it to me within 2 weeks. And like, they let me know if any of it's time sensitive to say, hey, this one's coming right up. You should jump on it.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Kristen.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a different perspective to Danielle around being in a town where no one knows what coaching is. And it's a learning curve where you have to like constantly educate people because they haven't heard of it, or it's this woo-woo thing that they don't know what it is, or there's not as much value. They're not people like, and then when go back to Madison, Wisconsin, where I have a lot of friends there, and they're like, oh yeah, like they've all had coaches and had experience. And so they have had experiences to value it. So just a different perspective on feeling like it's too much or not enough. Yeah.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that don't know what it is. And I know Austin's a tough place to be a coach, just like Boulder is, but I don't have any local clients. So it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like I just go beyond where I am. I get my cup filled by my community of like, I like hanging out with other coaches, but like I reach beyond the wall to find the opportunity. And so I know we're right at time here, and really like I would love this to be a 4-hour session, but nobody would RSVP for it if it was. So really grateful for everybody's time and attention today, and just giving Lindsay and I to share stuff that we're really passionate about with y'all. Like I said, this is only one version of a success story here, and there are many ways to create a path to sustainable revenue in this work. And if anybody is looking for support in that, I want to offer you guys the opportunity to connect with me further. I'm not here to sell you coaching. I was really just here to have a wonderful conversation about how to build a business. But if anybody is curious about work with me, there is an opportunity to do that. I know I said I'm coaching 27 people, but I'm about to fire like 14 of them because I'm stepping away from a platform that I'm working on that I really don't like. And so there's going to be a lot of room in my practice to work with people more intentionally. And I can just tell by the folks who showed up here that you're the type of people I'd love to work with. And so if anybody's curious about it, there's a link in the chat for a 45-minute session with me that's no strings attached. I don't care if you end up hiring me or not, but if you do want to go deeper in having a conversation around this and how to bring more of your gifts and what you care about to the world, I'd love to connect with you, and that invitation is there for each of you. And I know Lindsay has something to offer you guys as well in closing here.
Yeah, similarly, the folks I work with every day are folks that are feeling stuck and frustrated and not quite sure where to go with whether with their business or with their career, and just feeling really lost and disconnected from themselves. And I truly believe that by reconnecting to yourself, you're able to then find the clarity to help support yourself in your career. So if you're feeling stuck and you just want like a different perspective or continue a nugget that was brought up today, or just to talk to somebody new more, I'd love the chance to talk to you too. Coming out of the session last time, I connected with some brilliant coaches and we had some really lovely, inspiring conversations. So I'd love to create that with you. So if you'd love to connect, please do. Calendar link as well. Love to hear from you. And if you have questions about your business, around coaching, around leadership workshops, I'm here to support you in any way possible.
Yeah, and modeling kind of what works well. Also, if you know somebody who would really love to work from Lindsay that isn't you, be their new favorite person and send them to Lindsay, right? And vice versa. Like if there may be somebody in your network who's like, oh man, I know this person's really stuck, they would feel like you're doing them a favor by introducing them to Lindsay or to me. That's a great value add to your network to offer somebody that you care about and want to support. And maybe it goes beyond you into somebody else that you know. And I've had amazing conversations with people that are just coming from a friend of a friend, and like everybody wins because that friend feels like seen and known by you. That friend of a friend gets a support process, and the person that you really got some value from gets a new business. And so when you're running opportunities for other people, you can always create the invitation that way as well. Who do you know who would benefit from this work? And for me, like it's really around supporting people to grow businesses that they love, because it was something I didn't even think was possible. And I can't believe like I actually live this reality every day, and it's really meaningful for me. And so for folks who want to kind of grow that business, and as Lindsay and I have called it in our work, coach vising, kind of that balance of like, yeah, we do some coaching, but we also do some tactical and strategic stuff like we did on this call. That's what I'd love to be able to do with you if you feel called to it. But I really appreciate everyone being here, and we'll share the recording, at least the part of it we recorded after our session today, if anybody wants to look back on this. But really lovely to meet y'all, and thank you for bringing your energy and attention to our time together.
And also, Gabe, I want to say, like, I'm a referral only coach. So what you just said was so powerful. But my guess, I also want to be able to refer people to all of you. So if we connect, or if you reach out and connect on Facebook or wherever and tell me what you're looking for and the type of coach you are, I want to be able to return the favor and refer people to you. So I know I refer only, you might be as well. I want to help you. So let us help you as well.
Yeah, beautiful invitation. Connect with us and share your work, because I'm sure you guys are doing amazing stuff out there in the world. Like Allie's been doing this for 5 years. I don't even know what she does. So yeah, there's an opportunity there for us to serve you as well in this, because I really think the world needs more of what you got.
Thank you so much. This was such a treat. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, guys.
Mute off
Wonderful.
your voice. Everybody say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks so
Bye
much.
bye.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.